So we are following breaking news this morning. WNBA star Brittney Griner has pleaded guilty to drug charges in a Russian court. State media reports Griner admitted to bringing a cannabis oil into the country, but said that she did not intend to break the law. She has been in Russian custody since February. So Ed O'Keefe has been following all of this from the White House. Ed, President Biden has come under some criticism because of the way he's handled this case so far. What is the White House saying this morning?
Anne-Marie, nothing yet. They have resisted talking about details of these cases, of course, because they are concerned about the potential to jeopardize the status of the person involved. In this case, we have reached out, but they have not responded. Remember, it was just yesterday that the president spoke with Cherelle Griner, the wife of Brittney Griner, finally, after Cherelle Griner had said on CBS Mornings that she hadn't heard from the president despite this situation. Brittney Griner had sent a letter to the White House on Monday pleading with the president to try to take up her case. Experts who track these kinds of cases, remember there are dozens of them around the world involving Americans either wrongfully or unjustly detained, and yes, there are differences in terms of legality on that, say that what she may have done here is pleaded guilty and made clear in court that she had no intention of committing a crime to try to get some kind of a lesser sentence, or to leave open the possibility that there may be some kind of a deal underway between the United States and Russia to swap prisoners and make that happen in the coming days or weeks. But other than that, no official comment yet from the Biden administration.
So as you know, Ed, Griner is not the only American being detained by Russia. Remind our audience who else is also being held.
Well, the one in Russia that gets a lot of attention is Paul Whelan, who is serving a 16-year sentence on espionage charges. He was first detained in Russia back in 2018. Another American, of course, Trevor Reed, a Marine, was released earlier this year, and the hope was that Paul Whelan would be soon behind him. That hasn't happened. The Griner situation obviously has gained far more attention in recent weeks and months since her detention in February, not only because she's a WNBA player, but of course because of our issues with Russia right now. The Whelan family not happy with what transpired here this week at the White House, in that Griner's wife got a direct phone call from the president pretty quickly, whereas the Whelan family says they have not heard directly from him over the course of their ordeal and are pushing, of course, to try to get more information on what he may be doing personally to try to get them released. And we should remind people, there is an office over at the State Department that deals specifically with issues of Americans being detained around the world for whatever reason. If they are classified by the United States government as being wrongfully detained by some other country, then the U.S. has a legal obligation under law to be seeking their release. Whelan's on that list. Others like Austin Tice in Syria, a handful in Iran and Venezuela, and in other countries are considered to be wrongfully detained, and this office at the State Department is working every day to try to figure out ways to get them home. The families, understandably, justifiably anxious and concerned that as time goes on, their cases get forgotten, so of course they're always pushing for presidential attention. The Griner case obviously has jumped to the top of the heap in recent weeks and months, but we should point out, for example, U.S. officials were in Venezuela just last week trying to secure the release of a handful of oil company workers who've been detained there for several years. And there are other cases around the world as well.
Yeah, we actually spoke to Paul Whelan's brother today, and he is hoping that this additional attention that Brittney Griner is bringing to this issue will help ultimately his brother as well. And we certainly know that Brittney Griner supporters have mentioned that there are others that are being detained that deserve this sort of attention. Speaking of her supporters, have we heard anything from them in reaction to this latest news?
Not directly from her wife or from her family, but others who are involved in these cases are the ones that signaled that what may have gone on here this morning in that Russian court was designed to try to get her a lesser sentence or to get her into some kind of an agreement that gets her sent home. But those that have tracked this have said, look, she is obviously showing quite good courage and poise under fire by writing that letter to the president, by understanding that given her background in professional sports and the platform that invites, she has an opportunity here to not only draw attention to her case, but to those of others, and her family obviously is now doing that in coordination, especially with the Whelan family, but others who remain or are awaiting more information. There was a big rally last night at the Phoenix Mercury game, or after the Phoenix Mercury game out in Arizona, where Cherelle Griner spoke, her coach spoke, and others spoke to try to continue to raise awareness and keep attention on the issue. Remember, her coach, The WNBA overall has said that there's a bit of a double standard here, that if it was an NBA player who had been detained, perhaps this case would be moving along faster. Obviously, the White House heard that criticism and has spent some time this week on the phone with her, as have other administration officials. The Secretary of State, the National Security Advisor, those at the State Department that work on this have been in constant contact with her family as they work on this and so many other cases around the world.
All right, Ed, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Take care.